Hello, everyone. Hello, welcome to another Whiskey Me live tasting. I'm just going to kind of tread water with words as more people join, or we allow more people to join, or give them the opportunity to join at least. And then we're going to get into this tasting. A lot has changed in the last month since we last spoke. We've got new packaging for starters, which of course you're all aware of. Must start with an apology, actually. Sorry that it took so long for us to get your whiskey out to you this month. The reasons hopefully are obvious in that we had to fill 2 pouches, twice as many, because you got your bullet one as well, which we're not tasting tonight. More on that shortly. And we had all the cards and the new envelopes and a lot of new procedures in place and everything when it came to packaging. So that's why it took a while, but we're back on track now and confident that we can get everything out to you on time next month. Whether you're subscribing to just Scotch single malt whiskey, whether you're subscribing to just the world whiskey, or if you're subscribing to both, in which case you'll receive both pouches in the same envelope. And if you haven't had a chance to sign up to world whiskey yet, then you may wish to do that. You've got till the end of the month to do it. And then you'll be sure to get the second pouch, which will be coming to you beginning of next month, the June pouch, which is a very exciting one. So let's get on with this month's tasting. We've got our Oban 14-year-old, and I have asked a special friend of mine, Ali Reynolds to come on and talk to us a little bit about Oban. Ali, like me, and like a number of the guests that we've had on in recent months, is a former bartender turned whiskey industry professional. He's currently the brand ambassador for Johnnie Walker whiskey. And of course, Johnnie Walker is owned by Diageo, and Oban is also one of their distilleries. So he is well versed in this distillery, very knowledgeable when it comes to all of Diageo's whiskies. And in fact, we've just spent the last 20 minutes on the call talking about Oban and its history and everything. So hopefully we've not exhausted Ali's knowledge of all of that. Anyway, I'm going to bring him in now. Hello, Ali. How you doing?
Very well, Tristan. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. Just saying, before we started, we noticed that we've both got very similar settings. We're both shoved up in lofts with.
It's not the same loft, just done in 2. It's we're both hiding from the kids, I think. But yeah, it's nice to come up to the loft and drink whiskey with a good friend.
Yeah, absolutely. This is basically what the reality of the last year has been: sat in my loft drinking whiskey with friends. So I've kind of got used to it. But we must start getting back into bars now that they're open. It's very important.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, I was going to say we were chatting about this for a good 20 minutes before, so I hope I haven't exhausted my enthusiasm for Oban, or at least forgotten everything we were just talking about, because we're having quite a good chat then.
We were indeed. Well, look, I've got a whole bottle here, as do you, so I haven't had to crack my pouch this week. But I find that a single sip of whiskey seems to rejuvenate my thoughts on the product and allow me to get straight back into chatting whiskey and probably chatting quite a lot of rubbish at the same time. But there you go. So let's start by talking a little bit about Oban, and we're going to try some kind of new technology on this live stream. I've got a few images to share. When we had Irv on last month, when we did Dalwhinnie, we sort of played a couple of mediocre videos of the distillery. Very weird. But so this month I've taken matters into my own hands. Not that I wouldn't have trusted you, Ali. And I've got some images of Oban to share with the viewers, and we'll see if that technology can work. But I thought it might be interesting just to show everyone where it is first of all, because sometimes it's difficult to get your head around Scottish geography, because there's so many inlets and islands and different sort of craggy bits of coastline. I mean, even with an arrow pointing to it, it's difficult to say, where is that exactly?
It's an amazing diagram you've chosen. It's there. Yeah, it's kind of tucked away, isn't it? And it's one of these gateway towns, I guess, that kind of lead out. Everyone would head up the west coast before they hit the Hebrides and visit the other islands around there. But it's a beautiful part of the world.
Mm.
That's for sure. And it's quite a thriving town, which I think is quite an interesting point with Oban. It's there you go, beautiful. You see, all the photos I had of Oban, if I was to share them, all have Irvine in them, so it would have kind of ruined the aesthetic. But yeah, that's probably a view from almost the top of the distillery, really.
It's the roof of the distillery,
yeah,
of it, yeah.
And I think the most interesting thing I find about Oban is that the distillery was there before the town, and a good 25, 26 years before the town. So the distillery was set up and was a working distillery, and then people started to build the village of Oban around the said name distillery. So it's quite interesting, and I think quite nice to remember that it's almost a bit of a luxury to have a distillery in a town. There isn't many that exist now, and I live in Linlithgow now, which is just outside of Edinburgh, which used to have the fantastic St Magdalene distillery just down the road from me, and the old still house is still down there, but it's all flats now. So it's quite a rare thing. I think there's obviously a few on Isla. Jura sits in the middle of the village as well. But
yeah, I mean, but you're talking about pretty small towns. I mean, they're all small towns, and Oban is too. But when I visited Oban, I was actually on my way out off Isla and over to Speyside, and so you kind of drive past the town as you head over towards the Cairngorms, and we drove into the town and we were like, where's the distillery? And then suddenly it's just there. And you're like, oh, right, this is, it's like, some towns have a town hall. Oban has a distillery kind of right in the center of it. And I think it is fascinating to sort of think about how a town must have grown out of this booze making operation, because but back in the day, of course, they would have done all their own malting on site. There would have been coopers and coppersmiths. Obviously the stillmen and people shifting barrels around the place, and then of course the boats coming in taking the casks off, probably down to Glasgow. And so it's mad to sort of think about how a whole industry, the industry sort of builds this town and sort of residences around it. And it is weird. I wonder why it's so rare. I mean, distilling operations, I guess, sort of typically were kind of addendums to farms. You'd have the access to the grain there and the mills and all that sort of thing, and perhaps you distill surplus cereal into spirits for the winter months. And a lot of the distilleries we encounter effectively are on farm ground. But to have one in the middle of the town, I guess, I mean, it's back to your point, isn't it, that it would have once been a farm itself, or or worked very much like a farm, and then such were its requirements of labor force and everything, the town just built up around it. Perhaps it was because it was such a popular whiskey as well.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't know, but I mean, I think it was set up at like end of the 18th century, like right at the end. I think the fact that it's actually on the water gives it more kind of ideals for trade and people visiting other islands or whatever else. But it seems to have survived so well as it is. I remember catching the ferry from Oban when I went to visit Mull, another great island destination. So there must have been trade going on from maybe the port at Oban once the village had been built up around it. But it's a beautiful looking distillery, the old brickwork there that you can all see, and a tiny distillery.
Yeah, and
I think that's the other thing about it that gives it its charm, is that it's such a well-known whiskey around the world, especially in the US. Like it's massive in the US. I think probably about 90% of what the distillery is making is going over there. But even if they wanted to expand, they can't. The village is right in front of the distillery. They've got a huge cliff behind them. There's nowhere they can really go. So they're kind of, I think there was a saying at the distillery that was, from smallness we produce greatness. And I think there's this lovely idea of that, you don't have to be this all massive monster sized distillery to produce a whiskey that's enjoyed around the world.
Yeah, it's talking about the fact that it's so big in the US as a malt, and like you say, it is a huge proportion of it ends up over there. I remember I was talking to one of the blenders from Diageo once a few years back, and my question to him was, are there any malts that you produce that you don't blend? Because of course 30 odd distilleries that Diageo own, You know, a lot of the whiskey that's produced in these distilleries are going into the blends like Johnny Walker, J&B, and so on. And I was interested to know if there are. I think the question I framed the question because I wanted to understand if there are any malts that were sort of too precious to blend. Like, no, we need this to be bottled as malt. Anyway, I think probably I had the wrong idea of why you would and wouldn't blend a malt, because you know you can blend great malts and still have enough left over to sell it as malt whiskey. Anyway, his answer to me, and he wasn't 100% sure, but he thought it's possible that no Oban gets put into blends whatsoever. It's the only one that gets bottled 100% as malt, which is quite unusual. And it was also quite funny, really, that I've got you on to do this tasting.
I was going to say,
the only Diageo whiskey that's not in Johnny Walker.
I was going to say, like, after all this time I've spent promoting blended whiskey and how great it is, you've chosen me for the one single malt that we don't use for blending. But until recently, Tristan, and I guess this is where I get to do my Johnny Walker plug, but we did release an expression under the Blue Label umbrella called Legendary 8, which was a blend of whiskies that was celebrating eight Diageo distilleries that were producing whiskey when John Walker first began his blending journey in 1820. So Oban predates that, and there's a few others that predate 1820 that we have on our roster that we've kind of blended together to create this one whiskey. But yeah, as you say, Oban was never really a distillery that was put into blends, and I don't know why. Maybe it's the size. You know, they're producing well under 1 million liters a year, and a lot of that is going to the US. So there's very little left to blend.
Yeah.
You know, even Lagavulin and Talisker, they're not massive distilleries, but there's still a lot there that's used in blended whiskey. And you know, we both know how many bottle expressions Lagavulin and Talisker have. So there must be some still there for blending. You know.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Oban's a pretty small distillery, but there's a high demand for it. You know, you'd rather fulfill that demand and make up your blends from other distilleries, wouldn't you?
I think so. And I guess it's the character that they're looking for. You know, Oban, for me, I'm sure we'll get onto this later, but it's quite a light style in whiskey. And it's, I guess, you know, once you're mixing heavier whiskies with grain, that balance that starts to achieve what Oban does anyway as a single malt, I guess, in a way. Not to undermine the skill of blenders at all, but yeah, Oban is one of those lovely, light, easygoing whiskies. Probably, dare I say it, why it's so popular in the US.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got a few pictures inside the distillery here. We won't spend too much time on this, but this is where the mashing takes place, which, you know, most of you who tune in every month on this live stream will be aware of the whiskey production process. You mash up the malted barley to extract the sugar out, and then we're on to the fermentation, which is unusually long at Oban, I believe, isn't it, Ali?
It's 110 to 120 hours, which is a huge amount of time. I think there's not many distilleries that overgo that, but they also do a short fermentation of 65 hours, which they're now pushing closer to probably 80, which a lot of distilleries would regard as being quite a long fermentation anyway. But yeah, they're doing bloody Nora indeed, Craig Harper. So 110 hours. They fit, I think they fit 4 or 5 in a week, and then it's each still is filled up twice from that. So yeah, it's a long time. I think only Scapa were up there with that kind of fermentation time previously. I'm not too sure if that's right, but
there's probably some newer distilleries that are doing really long ones now, because it's kind of a bit of a fetish now to do long fermentations. I mean, from a flavor standpoint, of course, one of the good things about long fermentations is that it does tend to create more of these kind of fruity characteristics, and can add a bit of these kind of like candied, confected, fruity, often tropical notes to a whiskey, which, like, for most people would be obviously highly desirable, and we want our whiskies to taste quite fruity, which may of course make you wonder, why wouldn't you just ferment for a long time? and the reason for that is cost, basically, and tradition. A lot of the distilleries that ferment for much shorter periods of time, they've always done it that way, and they've done that way because they need to get the wash in, they need to get it, they need to get the water in, they need to get it fermented, they need to get it out and get it distilled, and then turn it over and release the equipment to refill it again. So it is unusual for a long-standing distillery like this to have that long fermentation, and I think, you know, it starts getting a bit geeky when you start talking about fermentation times, but the point is that process, that procedure is present in the final liquid, because you do get this fruitiness come through, and also that lightness that Ali mentioned as well.
Yeah, and that's it with Oban for me. I think that, you know, you've hit the nail on the head there. I don't find too many tropical notes with it, but that element of lemon zest in particular, and orange. A lot of people that visit the distillery always say that they get this orange zesty note from Oban, which I think in two parts makes it a great whiskey for sipping neat if you want something light and easy going. It makes a wicked old fashioned because it's got those notes in it already. But then for me, you know, again, dare I say it, for that American market, it's almost, without that biscuity kind of cereal finish, it's almost similar to bourbon in a way, like these bitter orange, you know, rich kind of toffee notes that kind of come through it. So I can see why it's popular in America. It's very easy to pronounce as well, so that maybe helps.
apologies to any of our American viewers. That's brilliant. But it's true, it is easy to pronounce. There's very little confusion about how to say that word, which is but in all not always the way in Scotland, is it?
No, and I think in all seriousness, I think, you know, as great as all these whiskies are, I think, you know, it does put some people off. You know, spending my time behind bars, you'd see people look at a whiskey menu and you'd see them skip past sometimes names that they didn't want to pronounce, or they'd point at the bottle instead of saying it because they didn't want to, you know, look the fool by mispronouncing it. But it's it's an easy one. And even Oban did that great advert telling people in America how to pronounce it. I think Craig's just put it on there, but there was an advert that went out in the States saying Oban, you know, like it's pronounced Oban, you know, and they went through this whole thing of how to order it. But I think that's great, and I think it's part of the charm that Scotch has, whether it is a professional advert or marketing gone mad. But yeah, I thought that was quite nice.
Yeah, totally. I think we've got one more picture here, which is of the stills, which, you know, look very Dalek-y. Not much to see. Stills a funny one. You see a photograph of them and they seem so lifeless, but then when you walk through a distillery and you feel the heat radiating off them and hear all that sort of hissing and buzzing and noise and everything, they feel very much alive. Yeah. So we'll have to try and work out a way of bringing them to life more in future live streams, because they look a bit dull there.
I don't think many people on the face of the planet can make that look like a really nice photo, but good effort. That's the two of them. That's it. Yeah. Producing all that whiskey.
So let's have a taste. I mean, I've been sipping away here anyway.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to pause it a little bit more. See.
There may be people watching who are yet to crack their pouch, waiting for the kind of starter's mark. So go for it now if you've not started tasting. Yeah, I mean, there's a touch of smoke on there as well, right? I mean, it's got this, like, for me, it's sort of this, it's where, I mean, you say it's the gateway to the Hebrides, and almost it is as a whiskey as well. You think about the Highland style, which is fruity, maybe with a touch of smoke, but usually not. Then you think about the islands, think about like Islay or Skye, where you start to get smoke introduced and a bit of that salinity, like sea salt or quality to it. And Oban feels like a mixture of those two things to me. It really is in the perfect place if you want to sort of start, separating Scotch by regional style of flavour.
Yeah, it's definitely got that light smoky element. I almost look at it as being like Taliska's younger brother or sister. Do you know what I mean? All that heaviness is stripped right back, and then it's still got all these wonderful zesty notes. It's got a little bit of that smoke, which I couldn't really put my finger on it before, but now someone said salty as well, like that little bit of saline at the beginning gives it that first initial bite,
Yeah.
which is really nice. And then I hope
we put on the tasting card, it was smoked salt, is what we put, which is, it's kind of what it is, along with toffee apple and fisherman's plaster. Which was I only had room for 3 tasting notes, and I wanted to sort of combine a certain kind of marine-like quality with a little bit of that kind of iodine-y smoke thing. I mean, it is subtle on Oban. It's not as sort of iodine-y as like the Lagavulins of this world or the Freugs, but it's there.
Well, I think now you've said it, because for me, forever and a day, Oban's always been almond, lemon, and orange for me. And now you've said that smoked salt. That's all I can smell now. So I think you've done quite a wise thing by putting just 3 tasting notes, because otherwise people's minds just wander too far. But now you said that,
I mean,
I can't get it out of my head.
Yeah, as you know, I mean, so much of it is open to your own interpretation as well. So we just want to kind of give clues of where we're coming at it from. And that might trigger something, or it might be something you disagree with or that you don't detect, or it might be something that we're incorrectly detecting. But this is part of the fun of exploring whiskey and finding what works for you and what you can pick out.
And Tim's asking what fisherman's plaster is.
Well, it is exactly what it sounds like. As in a band-aid for a cut on a fisherman's hand. If you can try and imagine what that might smell, not taste maybe, because that's a bit disgusting, what that might smell like with those sort of that medicinally TCP kind of note combined with perhaps a little bit of mackerel or herring scale, a bit of seawater, maybe a little bit of damp wood, then you're kind of on your way to a fisherman's plaster. If you've never eaten a fisherman's plaster, you haven't lived.
You're drawing up a beautiful picture. And you were saying about the packaging. The packaging's changed.
Yeah. So, well, it's a complete overhaul, really. It contains much the same information. We just wanted to refresh the whole thing. It's probably most of you listening are aware that we featured on Dragon's Den last week on Thursday. In fact, Dragon's Den's on right now, so we're currently clashing with this week's episode.
Good.
we were on Dragon's Den last week and had great success on there. We actually filmed it around about nearly 9 months ago, and it went better than we expected. Dragon's Den was never something that we planned on doing. We actually got a call asking us to apply to go on the show. We had to go through the same application process as any other business would. And we were successful and filmed it, and it went really, really well. We've got 3 investment from 3 dragons, and that deal has now all been signed and everything. We now have 3 new business partners. But in the period since then, we've been busy working, even before the deal was signed, ready for a busy summer because we're planning on launching internationally, ready for our new World Whisky product, and ready for the Dragon's Den, quite frankly, because obviously it's shone quite a spotlight onto our business, and we're super pleased with the way it's gone. You guys that are watching right now, probably all existing subscribers before Dragon's Den came along, and you've got your Oban and you're drinking it. But next month you're going to be joined by at least another 3,500 subscribers that we've gained in the last week, which is amazing. We hope that by building our membership, it allows us to do bigger and better things with our whiskey. You may also be aware that we've now upgraded our pouch size. So from next month onwards, you're getting an extra 20% more whiskey. That was one of our membership reward milestones at 4,000 members. So everyone's up to 60 ml or 6cl pouches. So that's pretty cool. And we'll see how it goes from there.
A lot of congrats coming in on the messages. It is amazing, mate. And I think it was such a great episode to watch, and kind of watch them go through the motions of deciding where they would be. But I think for me, one of the greatest things was one of the dragons pointed out that whiskey was an investment that people needed to get into, and it's the next big thing in terms of spirits. And watching Irvin with you last month, you were talking about not mixing whiskey and not doing all this stuff with it, and the kind of brand ambassadors of old. But I think all that flavors in Scotch. It just needs discovering, right? And this is the perfect way to do it. So hats off to you both. It's a great way to do it. It's a great way to get people exploring whiskey from their own home, without the pressure of a bar or whoever else.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, look, the thing is, you, like me, come from a bartending background, and really when you're creating cocktails, all you're thinking about is flavor. You're thinking about, how do I mix this flavor with that? How will that partner with this? What will that ingredient be like if I put it in there? And so, bartenders live and breathe flavor, and we assign flavor to everything. So we, pick a gin brand, pick a rum brand, pick a whiskey brand. We can summarize it in 2 or 3 words, right? And so Whiskey Me is just purely an extension of that kind of process, that mentality towards ingredients. And it's just about taking these great whiskies and saying, whiskey isn't whiskey. Every whiskey is different. There's not one kind of whiskey flavor. They're all different. There's diversity in this category. And it's increasing as well. Old distilleries putting out new releases, new distilleries putting out new releases, new territories releasing whiskey that have never made it before and putting their own local twist on it. And so there's just never been a better time to explore the category and to appreciate how sort of diverse and interesting this category is when it comes to flavor. And I think that what we're doing with Whiskey Me at only £7 a month or £7.95 a month just is I hope giving access to these whiskies to a new audience of people who perhaps wouldn't feel comfortable going into a bar and asking these questions, and certainly wouldn't feel comfortable splashing 50 quid on a bottle that they've never tasted before. So that's the whole idea behind it.
I think that's it's so good. And you remove the kind of pretentious, the pretension around it. There's no worry about how you enjoy it or how anyone watching this is drinking it at home, whether it's with soda, whether they're putting water in it, whether they're adding ice. They're just doing their own thing. And I think that's the nicest thing about it, for sure. Yeah. But as you said, with bartenders and creating drinks and looking for flavor, there's so many unique flavors within Scotch as a portfolio than there is with any other spirit category. So I think, why not mix it? Why not enjoy it how you want? Probably price, but the flavors are all there for sure.
Yeah, price is probably whiskey's not getting cheaper, that's for sure. And so we have gone from a kind of moment where it was like, hey, mix single malts, it's all good, to now like, Jesus, mixing single malts is expensive.
Yeah.
If price isn't an issue, if you're working in a bar or you're at home and you can afford to do it, then there's so many great opportunities of mixing these spirits. And it's for that reason that Oban to me tastes a bit like smoked salt and fisherman's plaster. Wow, what would that be like in a cocktail? What cocktail would that work well in? What wouldn't it work well in? And there's just a whole world of opportunity there with that, beyond just enjoying the spirit for its inherent value.
Exactly.
So before you go, tell us a little bit about your role as a Johnny Walker ambassador. What does that involve, and what's going on in the world of Johnny Walker at the moment? Because I know you've had to move up to Edinburgh for. I presume, did you move up there for the Princess Street thing, or is that you going up anyway?
No, I did. Edinburgh's always been somewhere that I've loved, as a city, and the friends I have here. I think Edinburgh's always been somewhere that I'd want to live. My dad came to university here years and years ago, and has always raved about the city, but it's changed so much, and it's just one of these places that I've started a family now, and moving out of London would seem like the sensible choice. But the luxury I had with work was that Johnny Walker are opening. For those that don't know, they've bought the old House of Fraser on Princess Street, and they're building 8 stories worth of like a whiskey haven dedicated to Johnny Walker and Diageo whiskies and take people through that journey. But there's everything in there, from recording studios to art exhibit space to rooftop bars, and there's not many places that you could sit with a cocktail in your hand overlooking an amazing city, staring at a castle on top of a volcano. So it's quite a nice place to be. It's quite a way to enjoy whiskey, because I think for us at Johnny Walker, what we were really thinking is that people visit Edinburgh or they visit Scotland, and then they want to go and see distilleries, especially tourists. And lo and behold, they're 5 hours, 6 hour drives away. So we wanted to take something on people's doorsteps. We wanted to celebrate Scotch whisky in the home of Scotch, which is Scotland, and where better to do it than the capital city. So that's the big project that's going on. It was supposed to open in summer last year, 2020, which would have been our 200th anniversary, but we've been pushed back for the obvious reasons, and it should be opening summer this year, fingers crossed. So end of summer this year, probably August time. And yeah, my job at the moment is helping promote that, and helping sell the world's most popular Scotch whisky, which sounds like an easy job, but there's a lot going on. There's a lot of competition. I think what we do at Johnny Walker is quite forward thinking. So there's always looking for new opportunities, looking for bartenders to work with, and helping promote Johnny Walker in the best possible light.
I guess the most important thing when you're working for the world's most popular Scotch whisky is to make sure it retains that title, because you don't want to be the guy that's on watch.
I know, that's the thing. Thanks for that added pressure, Tristan. That's exactly what I needed whilst being on leave.
I don't think it's under great threat though, right? It's very
It's doing very well, and I think what the amazing thing for me is to realize is the way that brand works around the world in different ways. There was an amazing documentary that came out recently called The Man Who Walked Around the World, and it really did look at Johnny Walker in different cultures. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but as a brand, it is world renowned. It's been on this amazing journey, and I think that it's such a great thing to see for Scotch whisky. This product is made in Scotland and purely here, traveling to 180 different countries around the world is quite something. But yeah, it's great, and it's great to be part of this brand and get to view all the different whiskies whilst working for Johnny Walker. So we've got 29 distilleries now, so yeah, it's great to see.
Yeah. Also on the Johnny Walker side of things is the new book, or relatively new, The Long Walk by Nick Morgan, who is a friend of both of ours. And that's if you want to deep dive into Johnny Walker, oh my God, that is a detailed story around the whole history of the brand, and yeah, seriously well researched tome.
Yeah, the time he's dedicated to that, and the help he's inevitably had from the archive team is amazing. But just the way he kind of brings it to life, and the story and the struggles that they had, and this kind of ongoing theme of endurance, that they went through it all. Keep walking.
I mean, it is a mantra that is very appropriate to that brand, and it's funny because Johnny Walker, I mean, it's like Coca-Cola or Nike, because it's so big a brand. I think we accidentally kind of we end up sort of assuming it's always been around, it's always been big, it just like hit the ground running, but it's not true. I mean, it's as humble an origin story as you can think of, as is the same with Nike and Coca-Cola. These brands do start from nothing, and a grocer's shop in Kilmarnock to the biggest whiskey brand in the world. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, in a relatively short period of time, there wasn't much going on to start with, but then there was this huge boom. And I think my favorite fact from the book, and I think I knew before, Johnny Walker was in, I think, 100 different countries before Coca-Cola had crossed the Atlantic from America. It's quite amazing to think that Scotch was, really on everyone's lips, literally.
It is indeed.
Yeah, and Oban doesn't feature in any of it. So There we go, guys.
It doesn't, unfortunately. It does feature on our website, though. So if you like Oban, or indeed any whiskey that we have featured recently, at least in the last year or two, they're all available on whiskyme.com to buy now. And we have a discount code which should, in theory, give you, well, it does give you 10% off, which will take it lower than probably anywhere else you can find it. And this discount code, Whisky Me Club 10, is now usable from this moment on and forevermore for all members. Well, and anyone else who Googles it, I guess, or whatever. And you can use it on any bottle in the bottle shop. So maybe you don't want to buy a bottle of Oban this month, but you want to buy something next month. We will be stocking all of the whiskies we feature in the future, and you'll be able to buy them. And be sure to use this code if you want to get 10% off. Cool, Ali. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time. It was great to go from one loft to another, Cornwall to Edinburgh.
Exactly. To the breadth of the country. And it'll be great to have you up here soon, mate. Johnny Walker Princes Street and a few other distilleries. But yeah, if anyone wants to visit Oban, it's definitely worth the trip. Yeah,
sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a trip. Let's not kind of downplay that bit. You know, you get to Glasgow and then you've got, I don't know, 4 hours driving or something crazy just to get out there.
Or the train. It's a beautiful train journey.
Yeah, train. Yeah, that's the smart move. Never thought about that. And then you got no designated driver either, which is all the better. I didn't check the comments. Any questions?
Just a lot of well done with your whiskey, but there was. Which I think is a nice idea. You should get a Whisky Me pin badge.
Yeah, it would work well with the logo for sure. Yeah, we'll do that. And yeah, maybe a bit of a merch section on the website.
yeah, there you go. That's the dragon's first, mate.
Right. Ali, thanks so much for your time. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and do continue leaving any comments if you wish and continue the discussion. And oh yes, another thing, quickly before we go, the tasting for Bullet will be on the 25th, which is this Tuesday at 8 p.m. We will be putting up the Facebook post probably tomorrow, just so you can get ready for that. So we'll be doing the first wild whiskey tasting on Tuesday next week, if you want to tune in. God, I had a lot of different stuff to get across on this particular episode, and I think we've just about achieved it and managed a thorough Oban tasting in the process. So well done, Ali.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, mate.
All right. Cheers, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Tristan.